guess the next topic for both of you guys is best running back in the Big Ten. Now, I mean, obviously got Henderson or Corum on here. I think there's some other really good running backs in the league as well, but definitely Henderson and Corum are at the top for sure. Buckeye Mike, what are your thoughts on both? Corum might even ask the dog as well what he thinks about this, running back battle if he wants to answer. But for Buckeye Mike, you think Henderson or Corum is the best running back in the Big Ten?
Well, and I think John can attest to this. There's really two ways to answer this. Okay, because from a bias standpoint, of course, I'm going to say Travion Henderson, of course. But you know what? If you ask me and you look at both of their stories, everything they've gone through, both have missed time due to injury. Both had breakout years in 2021. Both are just overall great people. Yeah, Henderson missed a lot more time than Corum. But if you ask me, it's a toss-up when it comes down to it. It's a toss-up because, I mean, where is – okay. So if you take Travion's healthy year in 2021, he had 183 carries, 1,248 yards, averaged 6.8 a carry, 15 touchdowns. His longest run was 68 yards. He had 27 catches, 312 yards, averaged 11.6 yards per catch, and 4 receiving touchdowns. And if you look at Blake Corum's best year, which I would actually say is last year, even though he still missed 3 games, he played enough. I would argue that was his best year. He had 247 carries for 1,463 yards, averaging 5.9 yards, 18 touchdowns. The longest one was 61, 11 catches for 80 yards, averaging 7.3 yards and 1 touchdown. The longest reception for him was 41 yards. So if you look overall, they're both almost equal. Mm-hmm. So I think it really comes down to which fandom are you in the long run? Because, to Jason's point, it comes down to which way are you biased? Because if you look at the stats, like I said, they're down the middle. They're equal almost. But personally, I like Corum and I like Henderson. Due to my reputation as an Ohio State fan, I have to say Henderson is the better back, but it's really 1A, 1B when it comes down to it.
Now, I think to be fair to Henderson, I could be completely wrong. Correct me if I am, because you guys are the experts here on these two teams. But was Henderson a true freshman when he had the 1,200-yard season?
2020. Yes.
That actually, I mean, you would, in a fair argument, would almost lean Henderson if he's completely healthy, never has any injuries. I mean, that's impressive to do that as a true freshman. Whereas with Corum, he was older when he did, had the season he had. But I mean, I think both are fantastic. But again, no one wants to hear what I have to say about it. What does One Scoop John's opinion of this debate, this question, best running back in the Big Ten, Henderson or Corum?
Okay. As Skip Bayless says, it's my turn. Here we go. So let's. I believe that Henderson, if he was put on the Michigan running back room, would be the 3rd string running back. I think you've got Blake Corum as the best rushing running back. You've got Donovan Edwards with his receiving ability, one of the best receiving running backs in the Big Ten. And I knew you were going to go to the stats here. And the stats are, I give you that the 2021 season where he wasn't injured, Travion Henderson had a great statistical freshman season. If you're going to use freshman stats and say that because he was a freshman, he did, he was amazing. I mean, remember this, Hassan Haskins was running back 1 for a large portion of Michigan's season that year. You may remember there was a game where he ran for 5 touchdowns. So Blake Corum, he emerged in pockets in that season, but in 2022, Blake Corum statistically was ahead of the Heisman running back winners until he got injured. He was ahead of Derrick Henry, he was ahead of Mark Ingram, and he was ahead of Reggie Bush, the last 3 running back Heisman winners. Then he gets injured against Illinois. I was there. And the balloon deflation that people felt because of just how much of an impact player he is. And I think that that's a key piece that you need to remember when you're thinking of best running back is that what asset is this player to the team? So the thing with Travion Henderson is he is a part of an ensemble. You have every year multiple first-round draft pick wide receivers. C.J. Stroud, you've been blessed by having C.J. Stroud. Before that, you had Justin Fields. Before that, you had Hassan Haskins. All 3, Hassan Haskins, Dwayne Haskins, rest in peace. All 3 played in the NFL. And Justin Fields, actually, I think he looked pretty decent in the preseason the other day, even in the NFL. So, listen, I think you've got to just factor that in. Ohio State is a machine. They have favored the pass game. When you favor the pass game, someone like Travion Henderson, when he's fully healthy, yeah, he's gonna have a lot of yards. But it's if he goes down, you have other you can survive on a backup running back. Whether it's a Mayan Williams, a Chip Tranum, who was himself, by the way, really good against Michigan, I thought, at times in that game. So when Blake Corum went down, everybody's heart sank. Balloon deflation happening all over the big house that day. So between that, like I said, in terms of trending above the running back Heisman winners, Jason points out in the chat that he probably would have wound up with 23 to 25 touchdowns. So and I think that that's very true. If he had continued through to the playoff games, the way that he was trending towards the season, his 2022 was 1,463 rushing yards. He's not a big receiving running back compared to Edwards. So I think that with all things considered, Blake Corum, in terms of his impact to the team and even the stats, since he was cut short in his best season. I think you've got to give it to Corum, not just best running back in the Big Ten, but I think this season he's the best running back in college football, period. When you look at the fact that Ibrahim is gone, Bijan Robinson is gone. I put Braylon Allen up there, and I put Donovan Edwards on a receiving end up there, but Blake Corum, I think, is the best running back in college football.
I actually would have to agree. I mean, if to throw a little 2 cents there, I think Blake Corum is the best running back in the Big Ten. Henderson's fantastic. I mean, his talent is elite. And like John said, Ohio State is a machine every single year. I mean, the players they get, it's just the talent is there. But Corum all around and what he's done so far and what he was going to be able to do in that season last year if he wasn't hurt, I think that he definitely is number one. I wouldn't say it's by, a massive amount, but it is fairly substantial. He is an elite running back, and it did hurt that he went down last season for sure. I mean, I think it's interesting. You brought up how there were other really solid running backs last year, like Bijan Robinson, guys like that. But I still feel like Blake Corum was best for sure. I really do. I think that he was, by far. Bijan Robinson's fantastic. I mean, he was really, really good last year for Texas. But I do think Corum was definitely having the best season. So it's going to be interesting to see how they both perform, but I definitely think Corum is going to be ahead. Are you guys done on this topic? Is there any other running backs you'd like to mention like you mentioned Braylon Allen? John, what other running backs in the Big Ten do you guys think are possibly, close to being toward the top of the Big Ten, especially you, Mike, because you didn't say anything about that?
I mean, I don't know as far as other ones in the conference. The only thing I will say is that like I said, I like Quorum. From a college football fan standpoint, they're 1A and 1B to me. They're ultimately, one could be 1A one week and the other one could be 1A the next week. It's flippy floppy for me from a league fan perspective. And yeah, Ohio State is a factory. Sometimes that's good in the sense of like we're constantly not having to rebuild and we have depth all the time. But I think, it also hinders things because, for example, look at Williams when Williams left Ohio State's receiving room and went to Alabama. I didn't even know Williams was on Ohio State. And then I turn on an Alabama game. He said, oh, yeah, he transferred to Alabama from Ohio State. And then, boom, he just goes off. And he's freaking awesome. So,
yeah,
I mean,
that is the exact example of why the transfer portal is good, is to have examples like that. I mean, having a player that is not getting playing time that truly deserves it, like Jameson Williams, because he burst out on the scene for Alabama. I mean, Ohio State definitely could have used him for sure.
Now, the only thing I will say on sort of this topic is do not be surprised, any of us or anyone watching, if your Heisman finalists consist of Caleb Williams, Blake Corum, Travion Henderson, or somebody from Ohio State, and the other one from Michigan, Donovan Edwards. Sorry, the name was escaping me for a second.
The other one.
Yes,
it's gonna be crazy if the Heisman list is gonna have all those running backs. That would be crazy.
I promise it's not a shot.
Marvin Harrison Jr. I think is already almost a lock. And I would say when you think of who's going to be first overall, second overall pick, I would put Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison Jr. 1-2 right now. This could change. I mean, we have a whole season to play, but his ability, and you even saw it in the Michigan game. That first half, and even into the beginning of the second half, he had he just was making catches that were just ridiculous. He, in the tradition of Olave, Wilson, the year before, and of course Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think that he is an impact player, and he will probably be in the Heisman list. The danger with Corum and Edwards is that they're going to be splitting so much production. And I don't think Corum will be used heavily in the early games at all, because I think Harbaugh wanted him to go to the NFL. Harbaugh literally gave him the advice of go play on Sundays, make your money. You'll probably be a starter in the NFL right away. He gave him the advice to go. Blake Corum decided to come back and try to help Michigan win a national title this year, which all credit to him. But, he very well could have been starting on Sundays. So,
yeah, definitely agree with that.
So he's going to be really reserved for Penn State, Ohio State, probably Michigan State too, because, I think they want to really run up that score on Michigan State this year. And then if we were lucky enough to get to the Big Ten championship, and beyond. So for those reasons, I put JJ McCarthy as the potential Heisman pick from Michigan, because he's the Heisman has become more of a quarterback award.
Yeah.
And given the fact that Corum, Edwards will split a lot of the production, and Ben Hall, you're also going to see, I think, have more production than you're expecting. So it could be a three-way split. And therefore, I think JJ's in the position where, because he'll be the starting quarterback, if he lights it up this season, that he might be the one representing Michigan in New York.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I remember watching an episode of Late Kick. Shout out Josh Pate. Go watch Josh Pate. He said that the only thing that hinders JJ from the Heisman is the scheme and the style of play that Michigan runs. And I kind of tend to agree with him. It's not a shot. I mean, Michigan, to me, I would agree, is more of a run-first offense. And so I do think that if you run first, you're kind of, in a way, if that would be his goal, you're kind of hindering the quarterback from being able to win the Heisman. Because look at Caleb Williams. It was pass. But you also had
him running a lot.
Aware of his running ability. And I mean, J.J. McCarthy is a smaller version of Caleb Williams in a sense, because he can run if he needs to. He can run.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean,
he's really good. Caleb Williams is definitely, the athleticism is off the charts. But yes, J.J. McCarthy is, capable as well.
He's the so I'd say Caleb Williams has to be the favorite to repeat for the Heisman for the first time in 3 or 4 decades. He's just so good, and he's his stats last year were superhuman, and he immediately elevates the team to the point where they might have been an 8-win team, and he elevates them to an 11-win team year one. What I would push back on is that from all the reports that I'm seeing, passing has been a huge emphasis of fall camp these last few weeks. Zach Zinner talked about it. It's something that they've been really focused on. Jim Harbaugh himself in an interview recently said, last year we did 60-40 run. This year we're going to do 50-50, kind of a more balanced offense. And they kind of have to. Because if they want to ease the load on Blake Corum a little, and they want to showcase good quarterback play, because remember, we're trying to get the number 1 recruit in 2025, Underwood, the number 1 quarterback, number 1 recruit. So they have to showcase their passing in order to nail somebody like that. You can't just pound the rock 200 times a game and expect to get the best quarterback in the 2025 class.
Yeah, definitely. We went way off the best running back in the Big Ten top. Hey, Heisman talk is interesting for sure. I mean, Drake May, if he has a great season in North Carolina and they, have a great year, he could be a Heisman candidate. There's a lot of guys that could be, but definitely Ohio State and Michigan are going to have some Heisman candidates. But to John's point, they definitely could split, the stats and not be able to get, that goal of winning the Heisman. It's going to be really interesting for sure.